SuperTalk Mississippi media production.
When addiction takes control, getting help can change everything. Parkwood Behavioral Health System offers compassionate, evidence-based addiction treatment for adults right here in Mississippi. Take the first step today. Visit parkwoodbhs.com. Healing starts here. With limited exceptions, physicians are not employees or agents of this facility.
MidDays with Gerard Gibert is on the air. MidDays with Gerard Gibert is powered by C-Spire. Power your home or business with C-Spire Fiber. To learn more, visit supertalk.fm/C-Spire. C-Spire Fiber powers SuperTalk Mississippi. Get ready to go beyond the headlines and join a meaningful conversation with people from around the state. You're listening to MidDays with Gerard Gibert here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
To SuperTalk listeners, this is Mandy Gunasekara, and I am excited to be guest hosting the midday show today. Gerard is out, and I am filling in, but of course, alongside me is Rhino. Rhino, how you doing over there?
Howdy, howdy.
Howdy, howdy. Good to hear your voice. If anyone is watching, we are working to get some of the video elements up and running, but the radio waves are working, so we are here talking directly to y'all and couldn't be more excited. We've got a really, really great show lined up. We will start. I've got a number of interviews from people I've worked with in the past that can bring some really interesting perspectives, covering some topics that some have been front and center, but some not so much. So we will start a little bit later in the 10 o'clock hour, around 10:35. We have Carie Sheffield. She is with the Independent Women's Forum. She is the Director of AI and Technology. But Rhino, she's not going to come on to talk about any of that. She's going to come on to talk about the role of faith in the administration. And the reason I reached out to Carie and thought of her as a really good person to talk about these issues is she has a book out called Motorhome Prophecies. I'll let her talk about it, but it is her journey in faith that started out in a very abusive family situation. She ultimately got out of that. She has prevailed. She is a very well-respected conservative thought leader. And throughout all of that, she was the source of abuse. She lost faith, and then she found it again. She's going to talk about that. And she has also been very influential in the administration the second go-round. So I'm really excited for that interview. That'll be here at 10:35. After that, we are going to talk to Julia Friedland. She is the Freedom 250 spokeswoman to talk about a big celebration coming up this July 4th, the 250th celebration of our great nation. She's going to come on and talk about all the events that will be available to the public, to people who are in D.C. I'm going to ask her and see if there's other things that will be going on around the country. I'm sure there all are, but y'all tune into that. You won't want to miss the update and all the exciting events occurring around that big milestone we will soon be celebrating. And then later that hour at 10:35, we have Dr. Ashley Sheils. She is the head of the Mississippi Children's Foundation. There's a new report that came out that assesses the well-being of children across the country, state by state, looking at a variety of metrics. She's going to break down that report. The headline from it is Mississippi is going gangbusters on the education piece of it, but there's other areas where we have a lot of work to do. So she's going to break that down, what it means for Mississippi's children today and what things are lined up from their perspective, working with our state leaders to improve outcomes, especially on the healthcare front and some of the other community wellness factors. So that will be very enlightening. And then last but not least, we will go into the official afternoon with a gentleman named Jason Isaac, the Honorable Jason Isaac. He served as a member of the Texas Assembly for many years. That's actually when I first met him, but he is a total expert on the energy front. There's a lot of topics to discuss when it comes to energy, whether it's prices, supply, what's going on with the Strait of Hormuz and how that's impacting what we, the consumers, pay here. And he will also talk about deregulatory efforts and some of the bigger energy dominance agenda picture and how that is playing out. So that is a very salient topic that I just right now had to fill my car up on the way over here. And I will say it was less expensive than about 2 weeks ago. So things are certainly trending in the right direction. But that is obviously a topic that is top of mind all the time, anytime you go fill up with gas. And it's also a priority issue for this administration. It has been from day one and continues to be the case. Rhino, did I miss anything?
No, but it may seem like cold comfort for the average American spending more than they were hoping to this summer on gas. But with the influx of people from around the world coming to the U.S. for the World Cup, I've been keeping up with a lot of their journeys across the U.S. There's a couple German guys that have been going around Georgia and into Tennessee, and I think one of them's actually coming through the Magnolia State in the coming days. But a lot of them were talking about renting vehicles and crossing the U.S. and going on these road trips for the World Cup. And they're paying less for gas here than they were at home.
Yeah. By
a wide margin.
Oh, yeah, significant. They buy by the liter, which is significantly less than a gallon. And I remember, this was years ago. Do you know off the top of your head what the gallon equivalent is in Europe to fill up compared to here?
I do not, but I can probably find it real quick.
I don't know. Yeah, you find that while I'm talking. I just remember years and years ago, it was $5 to $6 a liter to fill up a car in Europe. And it's only gotten worse. And a lot of this has to do with their efforts to try and shift their entire economies to quote unquote green or clean energy, which comes with a lot of cost and none of the reliability. And it has significantly disrupted their industries. The majority of industries have been moving out. And in England alone, since 2000, I'm pretty sure it's from 2000 to 2020. I could be off by a year or two, but a 20-year period, the UK lost 20% of its daily electricity output. So you think about that, what that means in terms of when you do use it, it's very expensive. They are subject to massive delays and disruptions. And then on the fuel side, it's also been significantly inhibited with their push to try to get people into electric vehicles, and away from, what works, what's reliable, and what is affordable. So I'm not surprised by that. That's an interesting side effect of the World Cup coming here. Are you a follower of U.S. men's soccer and geared up for the once things actually kick off?
Oh yeah, I've been waiting on this since before COVID, because this got announced back in 2018 that the U.S. was going to co-host the World Cup with Mexico and Canada. So I've been looking forward to this for a while. It's still a little surreal being just a couple of days out from the start of it, but I did find the average prices and doing a little conversion here, a little napkin math, because it's all in euros per liter.
Okay.
Looks like the cheapest for, say, a World Cup nation would be about $6.57 a gallon.
Yeah, and that's the cheapest. Yeah. So they're breathing a sigh of relief. We are obviously upset. I know Americans are paying certainly more than was planned, but it's temporary, and we'll get into it a little bit more, what's going on with the Iranian peace negotiations and the president's effort there, and an update from Vice President J.D. Vance. We'll certainly get into all of that, but the energy dominance agenda, it's alive and well, and as far as the undercurrents of what will impact prices long term, everything everything is trending in the right direction. So certainly light at the end of the tunnel for the average American consumer. All right, Rhino, other than soccer coming to the United States, there's a big old basketball game last night. Did you have a chance to tune into that?
I didn't watch a second of it.
I didn't watch a second of it, but I did follow a lot of the response to President Trump going. So President Trump went to the Knicks-Spurs game. The Spurs prevailed in this ongoing this ongoing battle, but nonetheless, President Trump has been a famous Knicks fan for a very, very long time. And even CNN last night was showing some vintage clips of President Trump going to Knicks games before he was in the political sphere and seen more as a herald, or maybe not heralded, but he was a beloved celebrity, more so than when he got into this wild world of politics. But he was the first U.S. president to ever attend an NBA Finals game. So we can check that off the list of things that have occurred here. And, you know, from all of this, I pay attention to the things my son tees up about these sports events. And there was one of the Knicks players, a gentleman named Trey Jemison, and he on Instagram has Bible studies and devotionals that are catching fire. We'll play a clip of it when we get back after this break. But something good coming from all of this and the restoration of a positive role model in the sports world. We'll take a quick break. We'll be right back. Y'all stay tuned in.
At Fillmore Beauty.
This segment of Middays with Gerard Gibert is brought to you by Covington County Hospital in Collins, where your health matters.
Middays with Gerard Gibert.
What? This is so
awesome. On SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Welcome back to Middays here on SuperTalk Mississippi. I'm Mandy Gunasekara filling in for Gerard today, and I'm so glad you've tuned in and joined us. We've got Rhino holding down the fort, and we were just talking about the Knicks game that the president attended, and leading up to it, there is one of the Knicks players, a player, if you follow it closely, he's very, very popular, Trey Jemison, is really a restoration of positive role models in sports. And we're seeing more and more of this. Every time I see it, I love it. So I just wanted to share it. There is on Trey Jemison's Instagram page, I encourage those who are interested to check it out. He does Bible studies and devotionals leading up to these various games. Obviously, he has a huge platform, and he is using it to spread the good news. And he describes himself as, quote, a living testimony of God's power. Here's just a clip of what that sounds like.
I've been praying about some things lately, and God put this verse on my heart for gratitude. He wanted me to be grateful that if I looked around and see I'm living answered prayers, things that I dreamed about as a kid, things that I prayed for in college, things I prayed for last year, I currently have right now.
All right, so there you go. Just a taste of it. Check it out on Instagram, Trey Jemison. A positive aspect of the ongoing NBA Finals, which the president attended last night. That wasn't enough for the Knicks to pull it off, but nonetheless, there'll be another game that y'all can tune into. All right, Rhino, switching gears significantly, actually. Today is an important day for the Democrat voters in Maine. It is primary day, and I'm sure you've been following along with the Graham Plattner scandals.
Bad guy.
Really bad guy. It's unbelievable. It seems every day there is something new that is awful and should be disqualifying. I think it says something about the state of political affairs when it wasn't a Nazi tattoo that was enough. It wasn't comments mocking a Purple Heart veteran, and it isn't the existence of numerous explicit messages sent to other women during his marriage that are beyond inappropriate and offensive. None of these are disqualifying. The Democrats seem to be sticking behind Graham Plattner, who is running in the Democrat primary for the Senate seat in Maine. And the reason this is taking national news, one is it's beyond absurd, but also the Democrats' effort to take back the Senate. They want to flip the Senate seat in Maine and to once and for all try to unseat longtime incumbent Senator Susan Collins. And it just keeps getting worse for Graham Plattner. But nonetheless, today will be revealing. It'll be revealing for the state of the Democrat Party, a party that is really committed to winning at all costs. You're seeing this also play out in LA, but winning at all costs, regardless of the type of people they're lifting up to be their purported thought leaders, people who are going to represent their state on the Senate. And beyond lapses in judgment, there's some serious concerns with Graham Plattner, but he is expected to prevail and become the Democrat candidate and face off with Senator Susan Collins, who is she, as Republicans and conservatives, sometimes she can be the barrier to get things across the finish line in the Senate. But she's still a Republican, and having her in the Senate is the ticket to being in the majority, which is going to increasingly be important. Something came out yesterday, though. One more thing I have to touch on, just about the Maine voters. There seems to be, there's a lot of independent and normal voters, if you will, in Maine, but there was one clip that was going viral of a Graham Plattner supporter, and I think this kind of sums up the degree of crazy that there was a woman talking about how she was going to continue to support him. She didn't care about all that had come out about this guy, that she was going to stick by him, and said that the only thing that would potentially be disqualifying to him is not the Nazi tattoo, but if he had had an Israeli tattoo on him somewhere. So we'll see. Hopefully the cooler heads and minds will prevail. And from a bigger picture, keeping eyes on what happens to the Senate seat in Maine will be very important for maintaining a majority for Republicans, or losing that in the Senate, which could have a significant impact on the president's policies going forward. Rhino, as these stories were coming out about Graham Plattner, what were some of the things that you just couldn't believe?
I couldn't believe somebody that had that much baggage politically would ever really be taken seriously as a contender. Like, you have oddballs jump into political races all the time. Mm-hmm. And very few of them get any traction whatsoever. So to have this guy who, in the early stages of his campaign, had that video come out of him in his underwear at a wedding with the SS tattoo on his chest, just right there for everybody to see. It seems odd that he managed to keep going after that in the face of running for a party that nonstop calls the president a Nazi.
Right. One thing, anyone who follows along to politics for more than 30 seconds realizes that what the Democrats are alleging Republicans are doing is actually an admission. They mirror a lot of what their party, their perspectives actually represent are doing, and they try to distract the average American voter by using the powers they have, be it the media or other institutions, to paint those negative characteristics and aspects on the Republican Party. But Graham Plattner is it in real time, from the Nazi tattoos to the Reddit post, and just being seemingly more of a mental patient, frankly, than someone who should be running for U.S. Senate. But again, we'll see. We'll see what the voters of Maine decide, and then what that ultimately means leading into the bigger picture as the Republicans fight to keep majorities in both the House and the Senate. Really quick, I also want to alert folks to something that is going down on Capitol Hill right now. Speaking of Congress, you have the Southern Poverty Law Center. Recall, this is a group that their whole mission was purportedly fighting the presence of white nationalism and the growth of these hate groups across the country. And then come to find out, there was a report that came out not too long ago revealing they were in fact funding a lot of these groups, and including some of the groups that were a part of the famed Charlottesville parade, where President Trump clips were taken out of context to try to paint him, Rhino, like you said, as a Nazi, fascist, or white supremacist. That group, Southern Poverty Law Center, is on Capitol Hill right now, being questioned by the Oversight Committee, so there will be a lot coming out from that. We'll certainly keep folks posted as additional information comes out. But it's frustrating, beyond frustrating, that a group like that was ever taken seriously. Not just in political realms, but prior to this report coming out that revealed how their funding was actually going to prop up the very groups they were created to purportedly fight against, beyond being taken seriously in the political space, they were taken seriously in the Biden administration and were a part of their efforts with the Department of Justice. And so, again, just a continuation. I like the way you put it, Rhino. It's bad dudes. And there's gals in this too, but just that party leaning on really fraudulent-ridden and questionable people to help shape some of their key priorities. I'm glad all this is coming out. And you have Jim Jordan, who is taking the stand right now, so there will certainly be some interesting clips and information that comes from it. All right, we've got a lot of news to get to. One of the things we'll talk about is the president's continued defense of the anti-weaponization fund. There was a pretty viral clip of him doubling down, saying, quote, "I think the weaponization fund is a good idea." We're going to talk a little bit more about that here in a little bit, as well as the endless lawfare that continues to riddle this administration for things that shouldn't be the subject of lawfare, including efforts to stop the UFC fight that is teed up in front of the White House to be a part of the president's birthday celebration. We'll get to that right after this quick break. Y'all stay tuned in.
From the
Attention, adoring fans! It's time for
Middays with Gerard Gibert on SuperTalk, Mississippi.
I woke up today and the world felt heavy, so I grabbed my keys and I went for a drive. Followed some county road wherever it.
All right. Good mid-morning and welcome back to Super Talk Mississippi here on the Middays show. I'm Mandy Gunasekara filling in for Gerard, and I am excited to welcome our first interview of the day to the show. I'll tell you a little bit about her before we officially bring her in. Carie Sheffield is a columnist and broadcaster in Washington, D.C. She works at the Independent Women's Forum as the director of AI and technology. She also previously worked with the America First Policy Institute, the Center for the CEI, Americans for Prosperity, and many other notable conservative institutions. She is also the recipient of numerous awards, including a 2018 winner of the William F. Buckley Award by America's Future Foundation. Now, all of that is very impressive. She comes to the table bringing significant policy chops and experience, but one of the reasons I really wanted to bring her on the show today is Carie is also the author of a new memoir called Motorhome Prophecies, A Journey of Healing and Forgiveness. It's a story of faith, and I wanted to talk about the role of faith in this administration, something that from my perspective, has been growing and prevalent and more at the forefront. So with that, Carie, thank you so much for joining us, and welcome.
Hey, Mandy. Thanks for having me. Great to see you.
Yes, you as well. So before we get into the role of faith in the administration, could you talk a little bit about your book? And it's been very impactful. Just tell the listeners, SuperTalk listeners that may not be as familiar, what is it about, and what is it that led you to write it, and how the response has ultimately been?
Sure. Well, folks who might be watching, here's the cover. I'm holding it up. Motorhome Prophecies, A Journey of Healing and Forgiveness. There's a picture of a motorhome on the cover. I called it Motorhome Prophecies because my father, growing up, he claimed to be a Mormon prophet. He basically led his own micro cult, was very controlling and abusive, and used religion to abuse my siblings and I. I have 7 biological siblings, so all 10 of us, we lived in motorhomes, we lived in sheds, we lived in tents. And as a result of just a lot of child abuse and trauma, sadly, 4 of my siblings have attempted suicide. I have 2 brothers with very severe schizophrenia. One of them sexually assaulted me when I was 17. And just, if you know anything about psychology, there's the DSM-5 manual of diagnostic of mental disorders. I think my family has all, or at least touching adjacent to all or most of the diagnoses, just from different psychoses. And I try to be as honest in the book about my dad because he himself had been molested as a child by a babysitter, and that really messed him up. And so the book is about how I unpacked all of this religious trauma and religious abuse. And because it was done in the name of God, I was really confused about who God was. And quite often we get the image of God from our fathers. And I think that's part of why we have the crisis of boys and men in our country, is because so many fathers create a void, especially for low-income boys. And so they fill that void with things like gangs and drugs, where they're just grasping for meaning and purpose. And so for me, as someone who had a very abusive idea of God, I walked away from God. I was agnostic for 12 years. And so the book is about that journey and how I eventually came to understand that, as I like to joke, abuse done in the name of God is like a fake knockoff Gucci purse with a big G. It's not real. It's not really who God is. And so I was baptized as a Protestant on December 3rd, 2017. And so it's about my walk since then also. And it's not been all sunshine and rainbows since then. And I think any Christian who claims otherwise, you might want to ask them some questions skeptically. But overall, I can say that since my baptism and since joining a Christian walk, my mental health has been able to improve, and I've been able to heal and forgive my father. And so now I've been able to share my story. I just gave my first college commencement speech to a Christian college. It was in Missouri on May 9th, and that was really special because a lot of the students at College of the Ozarks, they come from high poverty and some of them abusive or homeless backgrounds. And so I felt grateful that I was able to speak some life over them.
Absolutely. It's your journey it's unbelievable at parts, but then truly shows the power of Christ and how that can change your life. And you have such an amazing platform and an ability to talk and speak about it and share it with others who are hurting and unfortunately dealing with some similar types of abuse. Understanding how important faith is to you, let's talk a little bit about how faith has really been a focus. It's been a focus of the president and this administration. You were obviously around and commenting on what was going on in Trump round 1, Trump round 2. It seems that he is emboldened and even more committed to, it's not just about him and his personal views and positions, but propping up people from all walks of life in various positions who wear this on their sleeve in very powerful and impactful ways. How has that, what has that meant to you? And, how does this potentially help in the long term restoring the focus of our thought leaders to recognizing and acknowledging our founding principles, many that are rooted in the Judeo-Christian approach to life?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. And as a person of faith, I am here representing my own views, Independent Women's Forum. It's not a faith-based group, but lots of people of different perspectives, we are involved. So I'm sharing my viewpoint here. But when we're talking about faith, so you mentioned I worked for AFPI, the America First Policy Institute. One of the roles I had there was to work directly under Paula White. She is the first female to ever give an inaugural prayer. And she has been President Trump's, one of his spiritual advisors and pastors for more than 20 or 25 years. And she has helped shepherd him into a pro-life perspective. She has helped to inform his understanding of the Bible, and she now has an office that is right near the Oval Office, and it is the first official title for a faith office in the White House. In other administrations, they would lump it together. They would call it like community initiatives in faith or neighborhood initiatives in faith and things like that. Not for President Trump. It is the faith office, full stop. And so Pastor Paula White, she is responsible for curating the faith-based events, everything from Easter to Passover. She does bring in, for example, on the National Day of Prayer, which I've gone to, in the Rose Garden. She has brought in people from lots of other backgrounds. She even had a Muslim cleric who is in the military, so he is serving U.S. members of the armed services who are Muslim, and he offered a prayer. And so you're absolutely right that this country is founded on Judeo-Christian principles, and that's undeniable. And yet our Constitution does allow for freedom of religion, because freedom of religion is the first fundamental right, in the sense of, I believe it was John Adams who said, and I need to verify it was him, but the quote is that is true, which is your most valuable asset is your conscience. And so any government that tries to get in front of the human conscience, we see that ends in misery and slaughter and death, whether that's the CCP or the Soviet Union. Government sovereigns that are forcibly atheist are murderous. That's just the reality of life. And so the U.S. founding was remarkable in that our Declaration of Independence, we say, we note that our rights, they flow from God. They do not flow from the government. And every now and then we see some very misinformed, so out of touch liberal politician or media host or pundit. I think recently Katie Tur, I think it was at MS Now, she thought it was so sinister that Speaker Johnson mentioned that our rights flow from the Creator and not from government. That really upset her. And I'm just like, listen, lady, you scare me. You clearly have no understanding of human rights and the dignity of the human person.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I certainly hope that these, being clear about what these offices are, what these roles are, even within the administration, the people who are right next to the president, it remains clear, and it isn't just something that happened during the Trump administration, something that can continue on well into many administrations, because we are the result of blessings of liberty, something that we're given and something that we must work towards protecting. Carie, thank you so much for joining us. Shorter than what I wanted to, but thank you so much for your work, your time today. And for listeners, I urge you to check out her book, Motorhome Prophecies, We've got to take a quick break, but we've got much more right after this, so stay tuned.
My doctor.
Come on. Middays with Gerard Gibert.
All right, we are back
on SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Welcome back to SuperTalk Mississippi here on the Middays show. I'm Mandy Gunasekara filling in for Gerard today. And if you're just joining us, thank you for tuning in. We just had a really great interview with a longtime friend and colleague of mine, Carie Sheffield, who has a book, a relatively new book called Motorhome Prophecies. And we talked about her journey back to faith. And interestingly enough, I was just in the break, Rhino, as I was discussing, looking on X on what's trending and the latest stories. And what popped up is Vice President J.D. Vance was making the rounds and has been making the rounds on a variety of programs. He was on Jesse Waters last night. We've got a number of clips that I'll bring up a little bit later in the show. But what just popped up is he talked about his new book, a new book called Communion. And he talks about how it was how it is about him finding his way back to faith. And this is a quote from him: "The American elite culture was forming me to be kind of a bad person." This is a reflection of how he was when he had achieved really significant success in the corporate world. And he said ultimately it wasn't politics that brought him back to faith. It was the need to be a good husband and father. Here's another quote. He thought about raising his children, building a family with his wife, Usha, and the more he was drawn to Catholicism and away from a culture focused on prestige, he found what truly mattered. So this is a trend, not just with friends and colleagues of mine that I worked with, but also from our Vice President, J.D. Vance, and he's got a new book out, something I will certainly be checking out as well. But I do think it's refreshing. We also see this from our Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth, constantly bringing up his faith and even quoting scriptures often. Seeing our leaders incorporate that is really refreshing and in line with this trend that we've been seeing among Gen Z. In particular, Gen Z has changed or bucked the trend when it comes to embracing religion. One of the latest stats, despite generations of a decline of religious affiliation, and in particular Christianity, Gen Z has changed the landscape where now up to 46% identify as Christian. So I think that's great in terms of future leadership, having a country getting back to, as we're looking at the 250th anniversary, getting back to founding principles and concepts which have really led to us being the greatest country on earth, where anyone has access to opportunity. It's not guaranteed outcome, but nonetheless, everyone has access to opportunity, and a lot of that is built from what Carie was alluding to, that these rights come from God, and that was embedded in our founding principles and dockets. All right, beyond the role of faith in politics, I was also talking to Rhino about the faith of Team USA potentially doing well in the World Cup. Rhino, what's the latest on that front?
Well, the U.S. will play their first match against Paraguay on Friday night at 8 o'clock. There are going to be watch parties all over the place. You might want to check around at your local watering holes. There's probably going to be a watch party there if you want to go hang out with some people and have a good time and feel patriotic. But I've been feeling pretty patriotic, and I was talking earlier about following some of these people's journeys as they come from around the world to America to experience the World Cup. And I'm not trying to leave out Canada and Mexico, they're co-hosts, but the majority of games are in America, and the majority of people are staying in America. And one of them I was talking about earlier is one, if you have Twitter or X or whatever you want to call it, Go check this guy out. He's a guy from Germany. His handle is at Freddy, Freddy, LA7. He's got a picture of Cristiano Ronaldo, the Portugal star, as his profile picture. But his journey the last few days throughout the Southeast has been such a good thing to watch, because you hear all this vitriol and hatred towards America, and then you just have this random German guy who's like, oh, look, that Stone Mountain's pretty cool. All this nature in Tennessee's awesome. Walmart's pretty cool. I get to go to the Waffle House. I'm getting to experience America. And he's the guy I was talking about that he's stopping in Auburn today for, I think, the Argentina-Iceland match that they're playing at Auburn's football stadium. And then he'll be traveling through the Magnolia State. So he did put out a request with a little map of his travel. So if you're on Twitter, at Freddy LA7, go check him out and give him suggestions on where to stop in the Magnolia State so he gets to experience the full American experience.
Oh, yeah, I'm looking at it right now. Yeah, it looks like he will go right through Jackson, and then basically through the middle of the state. So, yeah, folks, tune into that on Twitter, and let's give them some recommendations of places to stop. All right, we've got to take a quick break, but right after we will get to hear from Julia Friedland, who is the spokeswoman for Freedom 250, to talk about all the events that are being developed and folks are gearing up for with regards to America's 250th anniversary. You don't want to miss this, so stay tuned. We've got a lot more.
Of Middays with Gerard Gibert is brought to you by the Mississippi Business Journal. Visit msbusinessjournal.com. Scott Coopwood, publisher and president.
Welcome to the show that challenges you to think deeply, and look beyond political posturing. You're listening to Middays with Gerard Gibert here on SuperTalk, Mississippi.
All right, welcome back to the Middays program here on SuperTalk Mississippi. I'm Mandy Gunasekara, filling in for Gerard this afternoon, and we're so happy that you have tuned in. And if you're just joining us, it is a great time because I'm very excited to introduce our next guest. We have Julia Friedland, who is the spokeswoman for Freedom 250, here with us. Julia, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's really good to be with you, and I've personally been thinking a lot about this and starting to see lots of Americana posted up everywhere I go. I spend a lot of time in various airports, and so it tends to be there, but it seems like it's increasingly being amplified. And so could you talk to us and inform the listeners of some of the main events and what's going on right now as you, Freedom 250 in particular, gears up for America's 250th celebration this July 4th?
Definitely. For your listeners who do not know, this July 4th will be our nation's 250th birthday. So we're putting on a Great American State Fair on the National Mall in Washington, D.C. There will be representation from every state and territory all in one place. Each state and territory will have their own booth on the National Mall where they will be able to share with the fair goers the history of their state, the specialties of their state, and what makes their state so special. We'll also have a massive Ferris wheel, a carousel on July 4th, our nation's 250th birthday itself. We will have one of the largest, if not the largest, fireworks show ever. And it's on June 25th through July 10th on the National Mall. On June 24th, we'll be having a kickoff event with the president, who is the mastermind behind the Great American State Fair.
That's wonderful. So if folks are wanting to plan a trip to D.C., how can they stay on top of this? Are there resources out there, and do they need to sign up ahead of time to ensure that they get access?
Yes, you can sign up on freedom250.org, and you can also see the breakdown by day of the different events that will be taking place during the Great American State Fair. So I recommend you go to freedom250.org to secure your spot today.
So shifting gears just a little bit, but the bigger picture, President Trump and his cabinet have been busy cleaning up and reviving symbols of our history, including the reflecting pool. The president just announced a new promenade from the Lincoln Memorial, kind of getting back to the original design as envisioned from the Lincoln Memorial planners. Why is this, or how is this, an important aspect of celebrating our nation's history and also preparing for what will likely be massive crowds coming into Washington, D.C. to be a part of all of these celebrations?
Right. If you're having a birthday party, you want everything to look spectacular. And the president, more so than anybody else, understands that our country is the best country on earth. Our capital should reflect that. And the president and his administration has been busy preparing for these events. Our whole team has been putting on events throughout the year to celebrate America's 250th. It's not just the Great American State Fair, but we've been having events throughout the country. And also in D.C., we lit up the Washington Monument in celebration of the 250th birthday already. There are events that have been taking place throughout the country in the lead up to this as well. But we need everything to look great for our 250th birthday party, and that is what the president is focused on.
Absolutely. And it's beautiful to see. I lived in D.C. for about 10 years, and sometimes it got to the point where these beautiful monuments or fountains, like the Columbus Fountain that they just revealed how great it looks after reviving it. You just kind of walked past it. They were covered in graffiti, had layers of dirt and grime, and were often surrounded by homeless encampments. And these are supposed to be symbols of pivotal moments in our history. So it's wonderful to see that there is an appreciation for that. It makes sense given President Trump's background and affinity for the settings looking good and reflecting the greatness that this country actually represents. Could you talk a little bit beyond the symbols and I guess the tangible aspects? Have you noticed or seen the reigniting of curiosity in American history? And are there elements and access to educational materials for students or teachers or just anyone who wants to get a very clear, unbiased version of American history?
Absolutely. We have a fleet of Freedom trucks that have been circulating the country at the president's direction, and Freedom 250 has actually been facilitating this. So these fleet of Freedom trucks, you can actually go to freedom250.org to request one in your locality. We have these Freedom trucks visiting even the smallest of towns at their request. And within these Freedom trucks, they give people a piece of American history. They're interactive. Yes, they're for kids to learn more about our history, but they're also for adults as well and teenagers to be reminded of our great history. And these trucks are circulating the country now as we speak. We've also had different events for Memorial Day. We had Rededicate 250, where we remembered our fallen heroes. So they were free and open to the public. Anyone could go and learn more about our country and our founding and the brilliant, brave warriors that stand behind our history.
That's wonderful and a really great resource. Wasn't familiar with the Freedom trucks, so certainly we'll coordinate with some folks to see if we can get them close by here in Mississippi. One other thing I wanted to ask you about, I had a previous guest on and we were talking about the role of faith in this administration. And, our founding was around Judeo-Christian values, and the blessings of liberty is one of the aspects that makes this country great. Will there be features for the role of faith that we see prevalent in the administration in a number of cabinet roles, but also in the celebrations as well? And what do those look like?
You're absolutely right. Faith is a major tenet of our founding and of our country today. At the Great American State Fair, we will have a day. Each day will have a different theme. And for the Great American State Fair, one of the day's themes will actually be faith and family, in which there will be different attractions, different opportunities to learn more about how faith underlies our country. As I said, President Trump is the mastermind behind these events, these signature Freedom 250 events. And because of that, faith has a role to play in all of these events throughout our country.
Yeah, that's wonderful, and glad that there's going to be a day set aside to focus on that. I think I saw this too as you were speaking. I think there may be opportunities for a national day of prayer and ways to participate that way as well. So I guess the moral of the story is go to the website and check out the list of events and the wealth of information and resources that will be there. Beyond the fireworks that everyone looks forward to on July 4th, what are some of the major features and exhibits that we can expect on July 4th that will be all that we hope for when it comes to certainly President Trump-style parades and celebrations, but what we can expect for this significant milestone?
Yes. There will be blue ribbon competition, Americana fair food as well. I mentioned earlier a carousel that is actually being lent to us by the Smithsonian, as well as a Ferris wheel. It's 110 feet tall, so it's a very big Ferris wheel. And competitions, as I already mentioned, livestock as well. So this will be a very traditional American fair. We'll also have military ensembles as well. And I touched on this earlier, but representation from every state and territory. That means individual booths from each of the states that fairgoers can actually visit and learn more about each state, their traditions, what makes them special. There will be representation from these booths as well. So there's a lot to offer for the Great American State Fair. Go to freedom250.org to see the breakdown by day, the different events that will be happening. But yeah, you touched on this earlier. For these events and for all of the Freedom 250 events, and just in general, he's made DC a much more livable, beautiful place that is reflective of the greatest nation on earth.
Absolutely. Well said, Julia. Thank you so much for joining us and for helping to build the excitement around the celebration. Again, for our listeners, go to the website and check out all that she mentioned, ways to participate, go up. The majority of the events, this is right, Julia, are free. It's free admission.
Free and open to the public. Yes.
Wonderful. Okay, so just the cost of travel. So once you get up there, you can participate to the array of events that have strategically, methodically, and rightfully been set out to set up this celebration. Julia, thank you so much for joining us. For our listeners, y'all stay tuned. We have got to take a quick break, and then we'll get into a few more of the top news stories of the day.
Thank you for having me.
And now, the talk that keeps Mississippi talking.
Now, on to the real part.
Dynamite! On SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Standing in the rain, with his head hung low, couldn't get a ticket, it was a sold-out show. Heard the roar of the crowd, he could picture the scene, put his head to the wall, then like a distant scream, he heard one guitar, just blew him away.
All right, welcome back to the MidDays program here on SuperTalk Mississippi. I'm Mandy Gunasekara, filling in for Gerard today, and so excited that you have tuned in to the show. Rhino, talking about I mentioned this earlier, but just wanted to explain it a little bit more for the listeners, since we were just talking about the big celebration that the Trump administration and a number of administration officials are working on, and separate entities like Freedom 250 that Julia was just here talking about. Again, if you want to learn more information about what's going on and the various events, not just in D.C., all around the country, you can go to freedom250.org. But Nothing can happen in D.C. without someone trying to rain on your parade, or be the skunk to the garden party, as some may say. Despite people gearing up for big celebrations, it's not just America's 250th birthday, but it's also a big year for our president. He is gearing up to celebrate his 80th birthday, and in very Trumpian style, he is going to have a UFC fight on the White House South Lawn. They're currently in the process of building out the stage for that event. Nonetheless, you've had some local Virginia residents file a lawsuit to try and stop it. Everyone and everything gets sued in this administration. That's par for the course. But at some point, it gets a little ridiculous. Here's a little bit more on it from Politico. They reported that a federal lawsuit seeks to halt the upcoming UFC fight card on the White House South Lawn in a mixed martial arts show timed for President Trump's 80th birthday and a part of the 250th anniversary of our country. The filing Saturday by the Public Integrity Project on behalf of 2 Virginia residents contends that the administration's authorization of the June 14th event was unlawful. Fast forward, it says that National Park Service regulations prohibit sporting events on federal parklands, and that Congress did not consent to the towering arch overlooking the event space, and there was no environmental review that was conducted before the construction. This is all from Politico. Rightfully so, that the White House responded in a statement that these legal challenges are what you think they are, nothing more than obstructionist, baseless, and dilatory attempt to prevent President Trump from hosting the fight, and that the event was no different than other various White House hosted events on the South Lawn and properly permitted on events on the Ellipses and National Mall throughout the year. So despite efforts by those who don't want any type of celebration, whether it's for the president or the 250th celebration events, the show will in fact go on. Rhino, it's just hard to get anything done in Washington, D.C. without somebody complaining. And one of the issues with D.C., I believe this stat is still true. I'm going to say it as if it is that there's more attorneys per capita than probably anywhere else in this country, maybe in the world, who knows. But nonetheless, people will use their knowledge of the legal system to try to stop the things that they don't want to be a part of.
And it doesn't help that it seems like the legal system has been infiltrated by those who are ideologically opposed to the president up and down the docket for the last several generations.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's there's folks inside the deep state that it's still there despite the president's efforts to root them out. He's done a great job, but there's still those within various agencies that will give tips to litigious individuals who will tee up cases that then land in the hands of their ideological friends that have, as you said, Rhino, infiltrated the legal system, which, results in a lot of wasted resources that ultimately generally get worked out, but nonetheless can create a lot of consternation and waste time along the way. But I'm excited about the UFC fight in front of the White House. It will be a show to remember, certainly. All right, moving on to another story that I had mentioned at the top of the show, but didn't really get into some of the details, is this anti-weaponization fund. This was, again, the fund which the Justice Department established last month. Just to remind everybody, it's a part of an agreement between the Department of Justice, the IRS, and President Trump, meant to settle Trump's January 2026 lawsuit against the IRS when the Trump organization's tax returns and other claims were leaked. People who were believed, and he set up this fund, it's a part of that agreement, but the idea behind it is for people who were targeted for prosecution for political purposes, including by the Biden administration DOJ, were able to apply for payouts, some form of restitution because of this political abuse by the FBI, the DOJ, and others. This fund was established. It's received a lot of pushback, some Republican, a lot of Democrat, obviously, but there was a fairly viral interview from the president and Kristen Welker, Meet the Press. It went viral because the president, it said that he stormed out. I wouldn't say that he stormed out. He sat there for an hour and dealt with a number of questions, and then it went a bit off the rails. But leading up to him leaving the hour-long interview, he was talking about this anti-weaponization fund, and he doubled down on it. He said that he thinks it's a good idea. He said, quote, "I think the weaponization fund is a good idea." And he went on to explain that people were, quote, "hurt so badly by the radical left lunatics under the Biden administration, and that he would pay those people what they deserve if it were up to him." Now, the complicating factor is that a payout like this and the appropriation of funds requires some congressional approval, and this is where the politics is starting to get tricky. There's also concerns with regards to abuse of a pot of money that's being set aside to go to those who have been persecuted by the political process and how that would ultimately be interpreted. But nonetheless, I'll tell you, my personal take on this is I was the subject of this type of political weaponization. I had 2 FBI agents show up to my office here in Oxford, Mississippi, and it just so happened 2 weeks after my name had been floated as a potential contender for a cabinet position in this next Trump administration. At that time, it was then the next potential Trump administration. And it was completely bogus. And it was a significant waste of resources, but nonetheless, it didn't matter because the people who were pushing it, and it wasn't just my case is a very small, somewhat vanilla case compared to what many friends and colleagues of mine had to go through. But nonetheless, when you are faced with that type of weaponization that comes in the form of the FBI or the DOJ, you have to get top-notch legal representation, which comes with a significant cost. And so many times the efforts behind these, this weaponization by these institutions wasn't because there was a rock-solid case against an individual. It was just to destroy their credibility, to try and bankrupt them in the process and make their life difficult, not because of something that they had done, but because of who they had actually worked for. And this was unfortunately common practice from the first administration during the Biden administration. And so all that to say, I'm glad the president continues to herald the idea of the anti-weaponization fund. I too think it is, it's a good idea, and beyond just the restitution for those who had very severe cases. I think that finding and holding those accountable who truly prioritized political decisions and using really important institutions to the safety, security, and stability of this country to go after individual Americans for no reason other than their support for or work for President Trump, someone that they too were going after. So it's not the end of that story, and it's a side note to the viral interview with Kristen Welker and President Trump, but standing up for a program that I hope ultimately sees the light of day with appropriate guardrails, of course, and independent review and those sorts of things that can slow it down, but nonetheless, I think could be really important. Okay, we're going to shift gears here with our next segment. We've got to take a quick break, but after the break, we will be hearing from Dr. Ashley Parker Sheils. She is the head of the Mississippi Children's Foundation and local Mississippi news. There was a big report that came out assessing the well-being of children all across the country, state by state, assessing various aspects, and she's going to talk about that. Mississippi has done really well on certain aspects, but continues to lack in others, and we're going to talk to her about that. So we'll take a quick break. Y'all stay tuned in, and we'll have an exciting, informative interview when we get back.
From the seat Middays with Gerard Gibert.
It is on
SuperTalk, Mississippi.
It's a hard world to get a break in.
Welcome back to the Middays program here on SuperTalk Mississippi. I'm Mandy Gunasekara filling in for Gerard today. And Rhino is working to get our next guest back on. We're having a little bit of technical complications. Dr. Sheils, we are waiting for her to join. But while we're waiting for those technical kinks to be worked out, I want to talk about a little bit of other Mississippi news. Some of you, I know you've been tracking this story. It was hard not to pay attention last night as many of us, probably most of us, received blue alerts on our text. I came home. I had been traveling to Tennessee and came back, and my son came downstairs. And my daughter, too, asking, what's a blue alert? What's a blue alert? And it had just gone off on our phones. But it was warning of some individuals who are on the loose. And the blue alert is indicative, obviously, of I had to look it up, of a police officer being injured in some sort of altercation. So, all right, we'll get back to that story in a little bit. We have Dr. Sheils, who is with us live and well. Hello, and thank you so much for joining us.
Hi, Mandy. Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, it is so good to see you. And Dr. Sheils is the CEO of the Children's Foundation of Mississippi and a regular on the program throughout all the SuperTalk shows. But today you're here to talk to us about a new report, the 2026 Kids Count Data Book. There's some good news, and then there's room for improvement in other elements. But could you tell us a little bit, what is this report, the 2026 Kids Count Data Book? What is it about? What does it look at, and why is it important for assessing the well-being of Mississippi's children?
Absolutely. Yes, happy to do it. And the ADEKC Foundation puts this report out every year looking at 4 areas of overall child well-being. So their health, their education, their economic well-being, and their family and community factors. And so, yes, this year, for the first time, there's an actual score to kind of see where our progress is and where we need to continue making progress, in addition to the overall rank. So, yes, you see the overall rank as 50, and immediately those of us that, all of us that care about children and families, panic, because no one wants to see last in the country, and that ranking. But when you see some of the improvements in some of the indicators, and knowing that nationally there has been a decrease in scores in some of these areas, so, you know, it's one of those where there's definitely work to be done, but we need to celebrate our success. Obviously, the education piece is where we need to celebrate some success, seeing our ranking as 16th and knowing that ourselves, Mississippi and Louisiana, were the only 2 states that saw measured improvement in the country. All of 47 other states, South Carolina held steady, but 47 other states saw a decline in education. So we can celebrate that we are improving in that area.
Yeah, so there's more to the story than the overall ranking, which like you said, it wasn't the best. No one, I feel like Mississippi for the long time has been the butt of many jokes because we're last in this or last in that, but it doesn't tell the full story, and those nuanced improvements that may not reflect the overall number are really important. Let's focus in on education for a second, because there have been a lot of people from all over the country coming to Mississippi seeking out leaders on education and asking them, what is it that you're doing? So what are some of the policies, whether it's the Literacy-Based Promotion Act or teacher training initiatives, access to pre-K, what are the types of initiatives that, from your perspective, you think are behind why Mississippi has not only excelled in this education ranking, but continues to improve and is increasingly a place that other states are coming to for insight on how to improve what's going on in their own state?
Absolutely. Mandy, I'm so glad you said that because it wasn't a magic bullet. And I think we need to acknowledge that there wasn't one piece of this that really led to the success. But there were several decisions and several pieces that came together at the right time, and this didn't happen overnight. So you mentioned the Literacy-Based Promotion Act in 2013, but also that same year, the idea that there's going to be more investment in state-funded pre-K, so providing more opportunities for children to get access to high-quality learning experiences early in their life. Now Mississippi is one of 6 states that meets all of the standards for those early childhood learning opportunities. So that, again, is making sure not only that legislation happened, it wasn't just the legislature saying, schools, you need to improve. It was, okay, what do we do about it? We equip them with high-quality instructional materials. We set an accountability system that we make sure when we're looking at rankings that we're helping the schools to improve the ones that are showing some limited proficiency rates. We're putting access to high-quality literacy coaches in these buildings that need that extra support, that know how to use the science of reading and are using that those best practices and evidence-based principles daily to inform how they work with teachers, therefore teachers informing how they work with children. So again, this multidimensional system-level work didn't happen overnight, and it wasn't just one piece, but the investment in not only knowing what works, but doing what works.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it truly is a bright spot in the development of Mississippi and changing trends for the sustained educational success throughout our state, especially in areas where not too long ago it was increasingly dire when you're looking at things like literacy in particular and some basic reading, writing, and arithmetic, to put it in very simple terms. Okay, let's turn and talk a little bit about the not so great categories. One of them was healthcare and the status of health. Mississippi ranked last in the health domain with poor indicators around low birth weight, babies, child, teen obesity deaths, and uninsured children. Some of this is surprising to me, but what do you think? What are some of the underlying factors contributing to these outcomes? And then what can the foundation, what is your message to our state leaders to try and get past, it's not just about the ranking, but how this is impacting Mississippi's children today?
Absolutely. And yes, that's one of the things about this data that I appreciate is it gets attention and it helps people understand that while we've made progress in one area, there's still work to do to increase the overall well-being of children in our state. And just as we mentioned with the Literacy-Based Promotion Act, thinking about early intervention, making sure children are screened for reading troubles, that they have evidence-based support, they have access to high-quality instruction and specialists that can help them. Let's then think about what that looks like in the health space. You know, when we are losing access to physicians and specialists in areas in our rural parts of the state where hospitals and doctors' offices may be closing, when you limit that access, right, you're limiting the opportunity that they have to get that high-quality care. And so when we think about the low birth weight, you know, that means maternal health and really thinking about how do we get mothers that are newly pregnant and have found out that they're bringing a child into the world into the health system early instead of later in their pregnancy, so that if there are issues, that those can be fixed and or remedied, you know, sooner in that pregnancy. I think for us, it again goes back to what can we take from education to apply into this health sector and think about system-level work. And that isn't there's not a single solution. It isn't just this, and it's going to make all the difference. But it's really thinking about how agencies work together, how public-private comes together, how increasing access, but also increasing quality. So it isn't just, oh, there's a doctor, but is there a specialist? Is there someone that works in that particular specialty to make a difference? And when we think about the teens and children that are overweight and obese, yes, exercise opportunities are important, but that's also an education piece for us to make sure parents and caregivers are aware of the importance of exercise, increasing access to healthy foods. You know, if you live in a food desert and your town or area doesn't have a playground or you don't have a safe place to play, there's layers to this system that all can be targeted when we think about a comprehensive systemic approach versus, you know, one ancillary magic solution to all. So I think increasing access and making sure that we have the best quality of care in all parts of Mississippi are really where we need to head next when it comes to health.
Yeah, as you're talking, I'm thinking, you know, just for increasing child activity, there's an infrastructure piece. Are there sidewalks? Are there safe roads to get out and run around? There's certainly the education piece of it, as well as economic opportunity. And so you truly are looking at the well-being of children. It brings together so many different aspects and trying to get folks to coalesce around smart policy decisions that focus on improving these various factors for our children. Dr. Sheils, thank you so much for joining us. And we certainly have appreciated you coming on to talk about this report. We'll certainly have you on again to talk more about the progress. But we've got to take a quick break for our listeners. Y'all stay tuned. We've got much more after.
Thank you, Mandy.
Thank you.
Up a miss.
You know what that means.
Middays with Gerard Gibert.
We'll do it live
on SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Welcome back to the Middays program here on SuperTalk Mississippi. I'm Mandy Gunasekara filling in for Gerard today. And if you're just joining us, I was talking a little bit about some Mississippi-specific news, and then we had Dr. Sheils come on with the Mississippi Children's Foundation. So I stopped that story. Let me get back to it really quick, wrap it up. And then Rhino is going to show us what commitment to getting the job done actually looks like in a second. But back to this blue alert. Okay, so yesterday a lot of people got a blue alert on their phone. A blue alert is sent out when there are alleged suspects on the loose and they have been engaged with injuring an officer of the law. That came through, and ultimately it was two brothers who are now behind bars after a Mississippi sheriff's deputy was shot Monday afternoon. It happened around 3:38 p.m. when the Covington County Sheriff's Department attempted to pull over a blue SUV in Mount Olive. The vehicle fled, leading deputies on a brief chase that ultimately ended in Greer's Cash Saver Grocery on Main Street. What led to that, though, is that the SUV, while it was stopped, what the authorities said is that the driver got out of the car with his hands up while the passenger in the vehicle began shooting at deputies. One of the deputies was struck and transported to a local hospital. He underwent surgery for what the sheriff's office described as life-threatening injuries, but he is now in stable condition. You have a lot of support pouring out across the various social media platforms for the Covington County deputy, including this from Andy Gibson. This popped up on my X account, where he said the Covington County deputy who was senselessly shot is the grandson of one of their church members. He goes on to say he was able to visit the young hero and his family. He's being treated. And ultimately, he said that they had been praying for him, his health, his wife, and his family, and asked the rest of Mississippi to do so as well. It's just a reminder that our police officers and our deputies, they serve such a vital role in our communities. We love them. We appreciate them. And we'll certainly be praying for this gentleman who was injured, as well as the continued safety across the state. Okay, to lighten things up just a little bit, Rhino, you came across something that grabbed your attention.
Yeah, it was over the weekend, but now it's getting a lot of attention because it is pretty remarkable. A lot of times when the weatherman has to cut in on TV, they're not the most popular people because usually they're cutting into a live sporting event or a TV show that people want to watch, but they are doing their best to try to save lives. And one such meteorologist in northwest Arkansas named Noah Simmons, working at a CBS affiliate of KFSM, was doing just that when a fire broke out in his studio. Here's a little bit of the audio.
And there's a fire in the studio right now. But again, we're looking at this tornado warning right now, and this continues to lift its way northward across.
For just now joining us, we just had a fire in the studio, but we got 2 tornado warnings, so we got to keep tracking this and covering this live.
So yeah, he's there in front of the green screen trying to give updates on the tornado warning with the radar behind him, and as the fire grows in the studio, you can see the smoke kind of forming a haze where you can barely see him. He's got his shirt up over his nose trying to keep going. And it took about 10, 15 minutes to get the fire under control, but they stayed on the air the entire time, providing what could have been life-saving information to those in the path of that tornado. So kudos to Noah Simmons in Arkansas for sticking to his guns and doing what he had to do.
And weathering the internal storm as he's trying to help those outside. I think everyone in Mississippi understands the importance of those active tornado alerts and announcements. So, yeah, kudos to him. I encourage folks to watch it. I saw it pop up, and just watching the smoky haze, it impacts the green screen behind him. And so, anyway.
Yeah, it obviously started off kind of small because it caught his attention, but there wasn't a whole lot of smoke. And then if you watch the full 10 minutes or so of the footage, it just steady gets worse and worse. And you're like, how is he still in there?
Yeah, you get worried about his safety, and also equally impressed that the station continues to run, and the antenna and all the connecting devices weren't impacted by the fire. Do they know what caused the fire?
I haven't seen any reporting on the cause. It might still be under investigation, but it happened Saturday. He's getting a lot of attention for it, and I'm sure we'll find out eventually. I'm
sure there'll be some more interviews about it as well, so we can monitor that as the story evolves. Another talking about evolving stories, I've got in the corner of the room. It's on Fox News following the ongoing fireworks on Capitol Hill as the Southern Poverty Law Center is testifying, and oversight members of the U.S. House of Representatives Oversight Committee are questioning them with regards to their efforts to pay for and stoke racism, while the image and purpose of their organization was purportedly to fight it. So it's very interesting playing out on Capitol Hill right now. We've got to take a quick break. You hear the music, you know what that means, but we've got a lot more news, one more interview to get to after the break, so stay tuned.
Get ready to go beyond the headlines and join a meaningful conversation with people from around the state. You're listening to MidDays with Gerard Gibert here on SuperTalk, Mississippi.
All right, welcome back from the break. I'm Mandy Gunasekara filling in for Gerard today on the MidDays program here on SuperTalk Mississippi. We are so glad that you have tuned in, and I'm very excited to welcome our next guest to the program, the Honorable Jason Isaac, who's the founder and CEO of the American Energy Institute. Jason, welcome.
Hey, Mandy, great to see you. Good to be back on. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, and you look great. Your setting looks absolutely wonderful. And I wanted to bring you on today to talk a little bit about the state of energy. It's obviously the topic du jour. Anytime someone goes and fills up their car, it's top of mind all the time. But maybe let's start with this. Tell our listeners a little about the American Energy Institute, your organization that you started, and what you do and what the purported goals of the organization are.
Sure. Yeah, we're a free market trade organization that represents companies that produce American energy, that produce it more responsibly than anywhere else on the planet. It's primarily made up of oil and gas, coal, and nuclear companies that advocate for policies to promote affordable and reliable energy. We're no longer embracing all of the above. We're about affordable and reliable. It's things that work and that we can count on when we need them the most. We actually advocate for policies around the capitals, around the country that would reduce the cost of energy. Our members encouraged me to start this organization a few years ago, kind of frustrated with some of the other trade organizations out there that were embracing political agendas. And I was just reading in Bloomberg this morning about a lease sale in ANWR, the Alaska National Wildlife or the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge in Alaska, and how no major oil and gas companies had bid on any of the leases that were available, and they won't and they can't because they promised their shareholders years ago that they wouldn't do it, and they've done it under this guise of ESG, which stands for environmental, social, and governance. I say it stands for everyone's suffering guaranteed. But our members push back on these political agendas because we know that energy is the key to promote human flourishing around the planet.
Yeah, absolutely. A really important cause, and one I'm glad you are working on the policy space and then communicating about. You're a very gifted communicator, and something where you can take complex things like ESG and break it down for everyone. You as an individual and the organizations you've worked with, and now AEI, have worked with this administration on their energy dominance agenda. From your perspective, how do you think it's going so far?
I think it's going really well. You look what's happening with the conflict in Iran and the Strait of Hormuz, and prices are up, global prices are up. We've been really insulated and protected from some of those price increases. When you look at the cost of natural gas, the cost of natural gas is $3 per MMBTU here in the United States. It's $15 in Europe. So it's 5 times more expensive. That's why Germany has the most expensive electricity rates in the world, followed by the United Kingdom. And then you start to get into California and policy, states like that reject the abundance energy that they stand over. And that's what's happened in Europe. And so we're insulated on that standpoint, and we're doing record production of oil and gas that we're exporting around the world. And unfortunately, we have to export some of it to return it back into the refined products that we consume, because there's just been this war on energy for the past several decades. We're now opening the first refinery in 50 years. I mean, that's amazing. The first refinery in my lifetime, the first new refinery in my lifetime is being built right now in South Texas. That's something China's been building refineries left and right. And for the first time ever in China's history, they've started to export fuel onto the global market, diesel fuel, jet fuel, home heating oil, things like that, because they've actually powered their refineries with affordable and reliable energy, primarily from coal. So they've got this abundance of electricity, cheap electricity. They can power their refineries and then export that energy. So we need to be doing more of that here in the United States. But the record oil and gas production that we're seeing, and now hopefully, massive increases. We've seen incredible increases in coal. Hopefully that'll continue even more with some of the recent announcements coming out of the White House.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's, the existing price increases are, they are increases, but they're not to the extent that they would be if we were still having to suffer through the last administration's attack on traditional reliable energy, from coal to oil to natural gas. And, we know it's temporary. We know it's short-lived. The president obviously is working to reestablish peace, with which I have full faith in his ability to do that. He's certainly come through in a lot of precarious situations. But, when you're talking to people, what is it that you can let them know that this current situation, where it's more than what you would expect to pay during the Trump administration under the energy dominance agenda, where he has prioritized increasing access and affordability, what is something that you can give them to get them through what is a blip in the the overall cost expectations for energy during this administration?
Yeah, it really is just a blip here. It's still, like as you mentioned, not as high as it was during the previous administration, without any war, without any attacks in the Middle East, without us attacking Iran. I think the Venezuela has helped significantly. People are talking it could be 7 years before they get up to 1 million barrels a day of production. And here they are at 1.2 million barrels a day. They've more than doubled their production. And a lot of that oil is coming into the Gulf of America, into our refineries that like that heavier crude oil. So that's beneficial. The economic prosperity that we're seeing, yes, the prices are elevated, but gosh, you counted that 5 months ago, when oil was sitting at $67 a barrel, $65 a barrel, there were companies in the Permian Basin in Texas, the world's largest oil production field, that were actually laying people off. Jobs were getting scarce. The hotels were empty. And that's completely turned around thanks to the independents that are putting the bit back in the ground, increasing production. So there is some economic opportunities and prosperity from that. And hopefully we'll see, because of the abundance of natural gas that we'll have, we won't see an increase in food costs, because that natural gas is used to make fertilizer. Which you look at some of the places around India, the fertilizer plants that are offline. You look around Europe, it's over 70% of the fertilizer plants are offline. That's going to have, when you get into the growing season, it's going to have an astronomical cost increase for our farmers and ranchers around the world, but fortunately not here in the United States. So just try to remind people, gosh, this isn't as high as it was during Biden, so we're actually still saving money compared to the prior administration, which is beneficial. I know it's hard to imagine, but we're still saving money compared to the prior administration. And what the president and Secretary Wright and Administrator Zeldin and Doug Burgum over at Interior are doing to promote affordable and reliable electricity. I mean, just the announcement in the last week on coal, it's just the incredible opportunities to keep the lights on here in the United States and keep electricity affordable. They're focusing on what works, and the consumers are going to be grateful for that.
Yeah, absolutely. And, it's not just the policies that are being developed. Another area where you and your organization has been a leader on is pushing back the lawfare against affordable energy. There is a lot of frivolous litigation that, again, it doesn't necessarily matter how it ultimately pans out. And in some ways, the people bringing these lawsuits just want to prolong it, using and being strategic about getting in front of sympathetic judges to their perspective. Could you just talk a little bit about these cases that you've been pushing back on and shining the light on, and its potential impact to affordable energy?
Yeah, we've triggered actually a couple congressional investigations based on some of our research over the last couple of years, exposing groups like the Environmental Law Institute, a DC nonprofit that was actually receiving money from the Environmental Protection Agency. This is another one of these things that I love. What DOJ was doing was exposing where our tax dollars were being used and manipulated and really worked against the taxpayer. So the Environmental Protection Agency was giving grants of $100,000s of dollars to the Environmental Law Institute. They had launched this thing called the Climate Judiciary Project in 2018, where they were tainting judges. They call it training. I call it tainting. Over 2,000 judges at over 50 junkets around the country, bringing these judges in and then training them, tainting them on highly debatable climate science that says that, we can tell the emissions from this oil and gas company from 100 years ago to which storm it's causing today. I mean, things that have been completely debunked and fact-checked by left-leaning organizations as not credible information. And then so they're training these judges out there, and you've got the Chief Justice in the state of Hawaii who is suing energy companies, which is really interesting because the only energy company they're not suing is the only refinery based in the state of Hawaii that's not listed amongst their lawsuit, because that refinery just heavily gives to Democrats in the state of Hawaii. So they get exempt from lawsuit. Apparently you can pay to play and bribe your way out of getting sued by your own state, suing energy companies for these crazy claims. Then look at what happened at the end of last year, Mandy. I don't know what you were doing on New Year's Eve. I was certainly not working really hard at 5 o'clock in the afternoon on December 31st. But the Federal Judicial Center released its 4th edition of its science manual. And in that manual, there was a whole...
A quick break.
Can
you stick with us through the next segment? Can you stick with us through the next segment? Yeah. Okay, let's put a pause on it for our listeners, because this is really incredible work that was done. But we're gonna have to take a quick break, and then right after we'll jump right back in where we left off with Jason Isaac, the founder and CEO of the American Energy Institute. Y'all stay tuned.
America's. Check it out. Let's do this. The talk that keeps Mississippi talking. Middays with Gerard Gibert. Let's get on with it. On SuperTalk, Mississippi.
All right, welcome back to the show. We're having some technical difficulties on the video side, but Rhino, I think it'll still work radio-wise with regards to continuing our conversation with Jason. Okay, all right, great. Just ignore Jason, the frozen screen that you're looking at. Okay, so let's jump back in right where you left off. All right, you're talking about the lawfare and how these extreme environmental groups that basically train or taint, as you say, judges around climate science. I hate to call it science because it's not science. It's just it is an activist agenda's approach to using climate change as a means of control, and they do this quite effectively. But it's something you and your organization has been really at the forefront in terms of exposing and pushing back. So let's pick back up right where you left off in terms of
and I was talking a little bit about Hawaii, and it's interesting is the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court of Hawaii, who has embraced and really endorsed this climate judiciary project, refuses to recuse himself, even though he's been heavily tainted, on the climate religion, climate science, call it climate religion. It is more of a religion than it is anything scientific whatsoever. But he refuses to recuse himself. You've got cases proceeding before the Supreme Court right now with the Boulder case. And what we found is that on December 31st, the Federal Judicial Center, which is overseen by Chief Justice John Roberts, which is the training hub for federal judges, thousands of judges use their reference manuals to rule on cases, and they snuck a climate science, climate religion chapter in there with people like Michael Mann. Michael Mann is this court-sanctioned a witness, if you will. He has been really sanctioned by a court for lying to jurors, providing false information to jurors, yet it deemed worthy of training judges. I don't know if I necessarily agree with that. I would think that someone's been sanctioned by a federal judge for lying to juries would not be someone really warranted to be training judges, but yet he's in this manual. And I think the most egregious thing is there's one law firm out of San Francisco called Scher Edling that is leading all of these climate nuisance lawsuits against energy companies. They have someone who's of counsel that was participating in writing this instruction manual for federal judges, and it was never disclosed that he was of counsel of a firm involved in current cases before federal courts. So we have exposed this. This has triggered another congressional investigation, both in the House and the Senate. But they can't get things done through legislative bodies, at least not in red states. They certainly can't get things done at the federal level. So they're trying to litigate it. And this has just been a complete abuse of the law system that is lawfare. And it's all about control, as you said. It has nothing to do with mitigating a changing climate. It actually makes mitigating a changing climate harder because it makes energy more expensive. And energy is really the key to doing, surviving a changing climate.
Well, it's such an extreme approach because it's not about improving the output. It's about reducing the output, and then controlling who has access to the various energy sources that is in fact available. So it's unbelievable that someone like Michael Mann, who is behind a lot of the extreme rhetoric, who has been discredited time and time again, would be referenced in a manual going to judges to help, better educate them. I'm sure that's how it was posed, their knowledge of this issue. That's not the only source of fraud, though, in climate litigation and some of the scams around climate carbon crediting systems. You recently highlighted something that came out of the NBA. It's still basketball season. Everyone's focusing on the Knicks and Spurs, but you highlighted a scam that recently came out of someone affiliated with the NBA dealing with carbon credits. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. The company was called Aspiration, and I believe it was their founder was just sentenced to 14 years in prison for fraud. And really, Aspiration was started as one of these companies that says, hey, we're going to go out and plant trees and then sell the credits and make money doing it. And they got a bunch of people to invest in it. I think Leonardo DiCaprio was one of those people that invested in this company that was completely fraudulent. I'm sorry, anything dealing with renewable energy or carbon credits is a scam. That is the Green New Scam. It's certainly a big part of the Green New Scam. And then they signed a contract with, Kawhi Leonard, this basketball player who ironically used to play for the Spurs. Now I believe he's out in Los Angeles and plays for his team. That's Steve Ballmer of Microsoft fame. And it was kind of a way for them, as they're being accused of subverting the salary cap. It's like Steve Ballmer invested in this company called Aspiration. Aspiration had a contract to Kawhi Leonard that says, hey, we'll just pay you, I believe it was $24 million a year, and you don't have to do anything. Which was kind of like, hey, I would love that gig, but apparently it was pretty nefarious, and it was a way to subvert the salary cap as they're being accused. That case is still under investigation through the NBA, but now you have the founder and CEO of this company called Aspiration, this completely fraudulent company, going to spend several years behind bars for defrauding investors. And that just gets back to the root of things. And it's one of these things that is in a lot of the lawsuits case. One of the lawyers involved in these climate lawsuit cases has even said that these climate lawsuits are a means to implement a carbon tax, since they can't get it done legislatively. A carbon tax does nothing but increase the cost of everything and then redistribute the wealth. So it's interesting to see this folding. I was kind of glad that it was actually making more of a mainstream news, because not that many people follow energy and environment policy and like you and I do. And so it was nice to see, hey, look, the NBA is getting caught up in this, and you've got professional basketball players are getting caught up in the Green New Scam, and now someone finally facing that accountability by going to jail. I hope it brings more light to the scam that is renewable energy credits and carbon credits and things of that nature.
Yeah, and it's the technology itself is it's pretty much a scam. There are roles of solar and wind in a grid. Maybe solar, not so much wind, but there's roles for solar and certain types of battery technology in energy grids, but the way that they were presented to the public as this silver bullet to save everyone from inevitable climate doom is the absolute scam. And then a lot of it's almost like fruit of the poisonous tree, the derivatives of that, whether it's the carbon credit scams, or, the people preaching the loudest for us to all limit how much we travel to see our family are the ones flying around on private jets and going to these international events to lecture us all about how we need to buy their fake meat burgers and not drive around to visit our families and embrace electric vehicles. Otherwise, we're sealing our fate in doom and gloom. It's a giant scam. And the other piece of it, too, I want to touch on this is the United Nations Climate Science, the International Panel on Climate Change. The listeners have heard me talk about this before, but they recently got rid of a climate scenario. So really quick, this is how the UN came up with some of the most bogus headlines trying to generate fear around climate change. They would use these various computer-generated models. They had a few of them. They called them climate scenarios. One of them was technically referred to as RCP 8.5, but it was the worst of the worst. It led to things like mass extinction headlines that would come out of these UN climate reports that then the news media would use to try and push things like the carbon tax that, Jason, you were just talking about. But it's a good day to see that even the UN stepped away from using RCP 8.5 as a metric that even they realized couldn't pass muster in this world where people are rightfully and increasingly skeptical of what people on TV and in some of these esteemed institutions, I'm air quoting that people can't see, these esteemed institutions are putting out there as fact?
Yeah, over 17,000 studies were done between 2010 and 2020 that used this RCP 8.5. Over a third of those said it was business as usual. And that was the scenario that the UN gave people starting in 2020, even though magazines like Nature, who have been recorded as printing some pretty bunk stuff and rescinding full research reports, they even said this is implausible. And I remember reading this going back to 2018, looking at these reports saying this is impossible. Our population is not going to be at 12 billion people, and those 12 billion people aren't going to increase their coal use in a quintuple, 5 times the amount that we are today. It was absolutely absurd, but the UN called it business as usual. It was weaponized by financial institutions, insurance companies. You even had 6 states that adopted it and mandated that their education curriculum teach kids based on this worst case, impossible, and implausible scenario. It's great to see the UN pull it back. The headlines that we've seen over the last 15 years, the studies that we've seen were completely debunked by them rescinding this worst case scenario because it is impossible and it is part of the scam, and it was used to scare a generation of children and people on this country and this planet.
Well, and there's a lot more work to be done. I'm glad that you're on the case, and thank you so much for the extra time with us today, joining us on the program. If y'all search up American Energy Institute, you can find out more about Jason and the great work he is doing. We've got to take a quick break, but y'all stay tuned. We've got more news after the break.
From the Middays with Gerard Gibert.
Welcome to our shop
on SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Okay, now you have a good one.
Welcome back to SuperTalk Mississippi's Middays program. I'm Mandy Gunasekara, filling in for Gerard while he is out today. And I want to keep talking about energy. It's the last story, but it's a Mississippi-specific story. If you're just joining us, welcome. So glad that you tuned in. We just wrapped up a 2-segment interview with Jason Isaac, who runs the American Energy Institute, and they do a lot of really great work, not just supporting the president's energy dominance agenda, but their mantra is making energy more accessible and affordable, and they've been exposing a lot of the efforts for certain environmental and leftist groups to undermine the president's agenda through very organized, extensive lawfare that at the end of the day is what they are doing to try and institute a carbon tax, something that failed under Democrat control, mind you, in 2009 in the U.S. Senate. It's never ultimately seen the light of day despite efforts by the Obama administration, Biden administration, to institute it via regulations. Those fights continue to play out. And now some of these left-leaning law firms have joined with some of these activist organizations and are trying to institute it through the legal system, and that continues to play out. But go check out the great work over there in terms of what they are exposing. All right, specific to Mississippi, last story, bit of a developing story related to energy, has to do with a Mississippi company that was planned. It's called Eve Energy. It was a technology partner in a nearly $2 billion joint venture that established Amplify Cell Technologies. This was a facility that was supposed to pan out in Marshall County, and it received a lot of attention not too long ago. Well, maybe it would have been a little bit over a year. In January 2024, Mississippi lawmakers approved incentives for what was referred to as Project Poppy. So if that rings a bell, unfortunately, that project has hit a bit of a snag. This came out late yesterday, but the Department of War has essentially put Eve Energy on their roster of, quote, Chinese military companies that the government entities cannot engage cannot engage with. So specifically, the Department of War released its latest update in what's referred to as Section 1260H list of Chinese military companies operating directly or indirectly in the United States. The updated list, it also was alongside a press release that basically described the following as due diligence that in its due diligence, the department identified 188 entities that met the statutory requirements for inclusion on this list. This list, if you land on it, it's referred to in the press as the Pentagon's, quote, name and shame list or, quote, blacklist of Chinese civil military fusion linked entities. And it's intended to support the Department of War's efforts to identify Chinese entities that benefit China's military and operate directly or indirectly in the United States. Unfortunately, Eve Energy was I believe it was a 10% partner in this Amplify Cell Energy Technologies project slated for Marshall County. Earlier this year, there's been a little bit of warning signs for the facility earlier this year, or that the facility and the project itself had hit run into some problems earlier this year. Amplify issued a worker adjustment and retraining notification, a WARN notice, on April 2nd, laying off 73 workers. It's also been made known that the investors had delayed the start of production in Mississippi site until at least 2028. And this came after some of the federal subsidies that the project was relying on expired. And then now they are hit with this Department of War designation, which is again referenced casually by the Department of War as a blacklist when it comes to engaging in business transactions. It's, a little bit more about the project. It was a nearly $2 billion project that was expected to create more than 2,000 manufacturing jobs. Certainly up here in North Mississippi, it would have been a great draw for those affiliated economic opportunities, but nonetheless, it has hit a major snag in the road. Now, for Mississippians who may be worried about these incentives that the legislators approved, they require certain milestones to be met for those actually to pan out. So, if the project is indefinitely paused, the Mississippi taxpayers won't be on the hook for providing those sorts of incentives. So not a great story in terms of what was otherwise promising economic development and opportunity here in North Mississippi. But it's good news in terms of the Department of War's efforts to ensure that any businesses developing sensitive technologies throughout the United States, they're paying attention to their affiliation with potentially dangerous with the Chinese Communist Party and the vulnerability that ultimately creates. All right, a few other stories I want to touch on as we're quickly running out of time. Another priority of this administration has been rooting out fraud, and there are consequences to those who engaged in that fraud. Yesterday, I believe it was yesterday, may have been a few days ago, but again, a story that is gaining more and more attention is that the Department of Justice announced that it filed denaturalization actions in various U.S. district courts for 17 individuals accused of serious offenses. This includes sexual abuse of a minor, wire and bank fraud, and distributing drugs wholesale without a license. So these are folks who came to the United States. They became naturalized citizens, but now that is being revoked because under the Immigration and Nationality Act, a naturalized U.S. citizen's citizenship may be revoked and a certificate of naturalization canceled if the naturalization was illegally procured or procured by concealment of a material fact or a willful representation. In response to this decision, 17 individuals who again committed serious crimes, you had Acting Attorney General Todd Blanche responded to this, saying, when criminal aliens exploit the naturalization process by breaking the law, there are consequences. Criminal aliens are lying about their past crimes, including drug dealers, sexual predators, and fraudsters. They gain U.S. citizenship, or gaining U.S. citizenship is a privilege. And under the steadfast leadership of President Trump, the Department of Justice maintains a zero tolerance policy for the abuse of this process. You also had DHS Secretary Mark Wayne Mullen chime in and say that American citizenship is a privilege. It must be earned honestly. If you come here, break our laws, and lie in your immigration proceedings, you forfeit that privilege. This is good work. If people are coming to this country, and from the very beginning are abusing systems put in place to allow for folks to have a very legitimate, and I know many people who've gone through that process authentically and earnestly. It's a very hard fought process. People who abuse that it's beyond frustrating, and I'm glad that the president and the Department of Justice and the Department of Homeland Security are rooting out these type of individuals who have come here under false pretenses, wasted massive resources, but then continue to commit crimes against American citizens. This all plays into President Trump's efforts to restore the legitimacy of legal immigration and to restore law and order across the board. Right now, I first saw this and it makes me frustrating to know that people like this can get through a very extensive system. People who go through the naturalization process, this can be a 5 to 10 year long endeavor, but it seems like some bad apples have found avenues to get in.
Yeah, and inevitably, whenever you have a system in place in government, you're only going to be as good as the best person in that system. And it seems like we've got a lot of governmental systems that are manned by what I like to call the not my problem people.
Yeah, I've certainly run into one too many of them, and they work for some of these institutions that at this point are designed to fail, whether under the Biden administration, you saw the border security elements. They shifted them to where the border security aspect was totally set aside, and it was designed to fail for broader, more nefarious political purposes. But nonetheless, the effects of that was increased crime and a total disrespect for law and order. So it's good to see that the heavy arm of justice is falling down, or the heavy hand of justice is coming down on these 17 individuals who are losing access to this privilege that they came here under false pretenses and then continued to commit criminal acts against American citizens. All right, we've got one more short segment after the break. Y'all stay tuned as we wrap up our Middays program here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Now, when I say stop, don't you move a peg. When I say go, just shake your leg and do the mess around. I declare, do the mess around. Yeah, do the mess around. Everybody's doing the mess around.
Hey, this is Bob.
Properly set all controls before recording.
All systems go.
The talk that keeps Mississippi talking. Middays with Gerard Gibert on SuperTalk Mississippi.
All right, welcome back for the last and final segment of today's midday program. I'm Mandy Gunasekara. I've been filling in for Gerard while he is out, enjoying my time with you, the listeners, and with Rhino. I do want to loop you into, again, a story I've referenced a couple times, and I promise we'll end on a positive note. Right now, it's a ongoing on Capitol Hill. You have the Southern Poverty Law Center that is testifying during an oversight hearing. It's getting pretty active coverage, at least on Fox and Fox Business. I doubt some of the other news organizations are following it, but here's just a quote from Dr. Alveda King, who is tearing into the Southern Poverty Law Center. During the hearing, she's accusing the organization of fueling racial division in the United States while claiming to fight for it. Now, she is the niece of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., if you've heard her name before. She's pointing out allegations referenced in the federal superseding indictment that says raise serious questions about the group's conduct. Quote, "My family legacy reflects the very truth that America is strongest when we recognize our common humanity. That is why I'm troubled by the conduct and messaging of organizations that claim to fight hatred while profiteering from division." I think that's well said, and I think that is a position that many Americans agree with, unless, of course, they are a part of the profiting scheme, which this oversight committee will be exposing. Okay, I promised to end on a positive note, and this is a story I saw earlier this morning, probably because I have a baby at home, and so I get a lot of the mommy blog information that is up in my algorithm for sure. But Reiner, are you allergic to anything?
Not that I'm aware of, at least nothing serious.
That's good. That's good. You know, the trend over recent years has been increases in allergies related to all sorts of foods. And after a drastic change in guidance to no longer keep allergic foods away from babies until 1 to 3 years of age. This was the guidance for a number of years, keeping them away from things like eggs and peanut butter, things that there are high rates of allergies to across the country. There has been a change in that trend after the guidance was changed from withholding allergic foods from babies until they are 1 to 3 years of age, instead introducing them by 6 months of age. The prevalence of egg allergy in particular among children fell by more than 17%. This was recently published in a journal affiliated with pediatrics. So that's good news. Goes to show you that some of these medical guidance, the approach to certain health issues and the affiliated medical guidance is very, very important, and a reassessing some of those long-standing approaches can result in very positive change, and so that's good to see. It's something I've struggled in sending my kids lunch to school every day in some instances where there are students with peanut allergies, and understandably so. You can't send them with the old peanut butter and jelly sandwich, so you got to get really creative. It obviously creates very dangerous health dynamics for the kids and families dealing with it, but it's good news that there is a change in that shift of increasing allergies to decreasing allergies. The one last note, trying to end on the positive note, is just reminding all the listeners, if you missed this segment where we were talking about America's 250th celebration this July 4th. You can check out a lot at freedom250.org. Secretary of State Rubio put out a post stating that we're less than a month away from our nation's 250th birthday. We have a lot in store, including the FIFA Fan Zone, June 11th through July 19th, the Great American State Fair that was mentioned many times, June 25th through July 10th, and then obviously the big parade, Salute to America, July 4th. All events are free, so just check out the website so you can be looped in on the latest and greatest. Rhino, you had one sports story that popped up real quick. May not fit in the theme of ending on a positive note, but was an interesting story.
I mean, it's one of those weird intersections between sports and politics where the Trump administration has disallowed any visas, but whether it be immigrant or non-immigrant visas, from a list of countries, and Somalia is on that list. Well, FIFA didn't check the list and assigned a Somali referee to referee in the World Cup. He's currently sitting in Turkey with a visa, but they're not allowing him to board the plane and come to the U.S. I did some digging as to why he couldn't have just maybe done matches in Mexico or Canada because they're also hosting.
Mm-hmm.
And come to find out it's because all the referees are headquartered in Orlando and they're all staying in Orlando for their security and safety. So if he can't come into the U.S., he can't referee the World Cup.
He can't go anywhere. Well, a slight complication. I'm sure they'll be able to find somebody else to fill that spot. But, the reason for that, there's good reason. President Trump trying to root out fraud and trying to protect this country from those who are coming here with not the best means. Thank you so much for the opportunity to be with you today. Please stay tuned. We've got more lined up here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
A SuperTalk Mississippi media production.